Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Schools Not Out, your daily classroom for CSEC and CAPE students.
You can watch this lesson real-time on Television Jamaica's YouTube channel or One Spot Media.
We are also live on Music 99 and GoJamaica.com. If you have questions on today's subject, you can send them in to Television Jamaica's Facebook page or Instagram at television_Jamaica.
Today's lesson is CAPE Communication Studies, and we will be focusing on writing the essay right.
I am Charmaine Tingling.
And I am Dian Hines.
Stay with us. We will be right back.
Not Out tutorial sessions on Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Schools Not Out, live CSEC and CAPE lessons here on TVJ. The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, along with TVJ, present Schools Not Out, CSEC and CAPE lessons live Mondays to Fridays from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, with weekly Schools Not Out tutorial sessions on Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Schools Not Out, live CSEC and CAPE lessons here on TVJ.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, along with TVJ, present Schools Not Out, CSEC and CAPE lessons live Mondays to Fridays from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, with weekly Schools Not Out tutorial sessions on Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Schools Not Out, live CSEC and CAPE lessons here on TVJ. The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, along with TVJ, present Schools Not Out, CSEC and CAPE lessons live Mondays to Fridays from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, with weekly Schools Not Out tutorial sessions on Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Schools Not Out, live CSEC and CAPE lessons here on TVJ. The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, along with TVJ, present Schools Not Out, CSEC.
Protect yourself and others from getting sick by washing your hands after coughing or sneezing, when caring for the sick, before, during, and after you prepare food, before eating, after toilet use, when hands are visibly dirty, and after handling animals or animal waste. COVID-19 tip: protect yourself and others from getting sick by washing your hands after coughing or sneezing, when caring for the sick, before, during, and after you prepare food, before eating, after toilet use, when hands are visibly dirty, and after handling animals or animal waste. 19.
live Mondays to Fridays from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, with weekly Schools Not Out tutorial sessions on Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Schools Not Out, live CSEC and CAPE lessons here on TVJ. The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, along with TVJ, present Schools Not Out, CSEC and CAPE lessons live Mondays to Fridays from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, with weekly Schools Not Out tutorial sessions on Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Schools Not Out, live CSEC and CAPE lessons here on TVJ. The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, along with TVJ, present Schools Not Out, CSEC and CAPE lessons live Mondays to Friday out tutorial sessions on Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Schools Not Out, live CSEC and CAPE lessons here on TVJ. The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, along with TVJ, present Schools Not Out, CSEC and CAPE lessons live Mondays to Fridays from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, with weekly Schools Not Out tutorial sessions on Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Schools Not Out, live CSEC and CAPE lessons here on TVJ.
Protect yourself and others from getting sick by washing your hands after coughing or sneezing, when caring for the sick, before, during, and after you prepare food, before eating, after toilet use, when hands are visibly dirty, and after handling animals or animal waste. COVID-19 tip: protect yourself and others from getting sick by washing your hands after coughing or sneezing, when caring for the sick, before, during, and after you prepare food, before eating, after toilet use, when hands are visibly dirty, and after handling animals or animal waste.
Education, Youth and Information, along with TVJ, present Schools Not Out, CSEC and CAPE lessons live Mondays to Fridays from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, with weekly Schools Not Out tutorial sessions on Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Schools Not Out, live.
Welcome back to Schools Not Out. We are discussing CXC CAPE Communication Studies. We will be focusing on writing the essay right. Ms. Hines will now take you through the objectives.
Now, it is important for us to pay attention to writing the essay right. Please note, students, though, that the entire paper 2 is focused on essay writing. However, today we will be taking you through Module 3, which you already know is speaking and writing. Now, the objectives that we are using today were extracted from the CXC CAPE Communication Studies syllabus. We are going to be focusing specifically on 3 areas. 1, we want to remind you how to apply specific communication concepts to different situations. Remember, you are effective communicators, so you need to be able to apply communication concepts such as digital media, the communication process and these varied concepts to different situations so that you can effectively disseminate information to your audience. Secondly, we're going to be looking at how you employ appropriate channels for specific oral and written presentations. Now, you must be wondering, Miss, why are you telling me about orals? We're not looking at orals. We're going to be sitting a written exam. But alas, my students, we also need to inject the oral aspect of the exam to ensure that you recognize that as a speaker who is going to be writing, you need to be aware of both skills. And you also need to be aware of the appropriate channels or mediums that you would use when you are doing both. Now, the third objective that we will be focusing on is how to use appropriate organizing and formatting strategies. Now, instantly I know a number of you will be saying, Miss, is what them two big words there? So let me just take you back to what those two big words are. Now, you remember in class when your teacher talked to you about peeing, P-E-E. Now, peeing speaks to making a point, giving evidence, and giving examples. Now, these strategies such as these will help you to organize the information that you are producing in your oral and written communication. Now let us discuss Module 3, and I will hand you over to Ms. Tingling, who will take you through.
Thank you so much. Now this module, Module 3, it prepares you to communicate with any audience, either by speaking or writing. Because you see, at the end of the year, you ought to become effective communicators in whatever form. It is section C of paper 2. So it means there's a section A and there's a section B. The prompt or the stimulus is scenario-based and is marked out of 25. We are here this morning to ensure that you maximize those 25 points by helping you to write the essay right. What do I mean, students? I did say scenario-based. Have you ever heard that before? I'm sure you have. So tell me, when I say that it is scenario-based, what am I talking about? I'm listening. There you go. It simply means that a situation will be created for you to respond to appropriately and effectively. So for the purpose of this morning's lesson, we will be calling our essay a scenario-based essay. Got it? Now, this prompt also tests two main skills: critical thinking, and I'm sure we all have heard this term. It is a global term. It is what is trending, right? And I am sure that many of you sitting there intend to become global trotters and are soon gone.
And critical
so you need to be critical thinkers to function in a global environment, right? So what is it? You know, it is simply, critical thinking speaks to the ability to think clearly and rationally about what to do and what to believe. I go further to tell you, my students, that a critical thinker will understand the logical connection between ideas. And further in the lesson, you will see how this functions.
So, what you're saying to me, Ms. Tingling, is that if I'm a critical thinker, it means that I can look at things objectively.
There you go. She's not only beautiful, she's bright.
Thank you.
Now, you may be required to write, listen carefully, either an essay, a speech, or a proposal. That is what generally obtains. But remember that no matter what your response is, it must be written in continuous prose. Just think of a stream running by. Continuous prose, all right? And let me ask you something. If I say that regardless of what they require, it must be written in continuous prose, that is like an essay format. Can you remind me, students? Remind me. What are the 3 main parts of an essay? Because I know you know this. You're right. It's the introduction, Miss Hines.
The introduction, as you know, tells you about the topic or the subject that you're going to be discussing. It also gives you the thesis statement. Now, please don't give me the look. The thesis statement is just that one sentence that guides your essay. So whenever I read your essay or your teachers read your essay, they know exactly what you intend to do.
All right, and there's the body. And I know this is your favorite part because this is the bulk of the content. This is where you write and you express that thesis statement that Ms. Hines is talking about. So if your essay has, let's say, 6 paragraphs. So paragraph 1 is your introduction and paragraph 6 would be your conclusion. Let's do some math. So you have 4. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro. See how effective a communicator I am? Even speak another language. You have 4 essays, 4 paragraphs, which we call your body. That's the bulk of the content. And then you have the conclusion, which is?
Which is where you sum it up. Now, do not forget, students, that it is in this body that you are going to apply the concepts that you have learned. Not true, Miss Tingling?
That's correct.
Because you have to ensure that it is that in your body, that you pay attention to whatever it is that the prompt or the stimulus asks you to do. So all those communication concepts that you have learned, that is where you are going to appropriately apply them to the stimulus. Now, how do we write to make it right? Now, the first thing you need to do, you must read the prompt carefully. Twice if necessary. And
3 times.
if never hurts. And then you underline or take note of the key terms that are used in the prompt. So now ask yourself these questions. What role do I play in this situation?
Ms. Hines, what situation are you talking about?
And remember, students, Ms. Tingling told you earlier that Module 3 is scenario-based. So it means that the stimulus, the scenario that is created in the question is what you will be writing your essay on.
Thank you.
So let us say they ask you to be a communication specialist, a student leader, a public relations officer.
A health worker.
A health worker. The roles are varied. So you need to understand what role you play in the situation. The next question you must ask yourself, what specifically am I required to do in the different parts of the question? Now let us just go back again and think about specifically am I required to do. Now it means that the prompt is going to tell you to do something, to do some kind of an action, whether it be to describe something. So you ensure that you read carefully what you're supposed to do. Now, who is my target audience? Now, this is where I drag your memory to that very little thing that you learned in the first communication studies class, the communication
process.
There you go. So when we talk about who is the target audience, take them back to school for me, Ms. Tingling.
All right. Now remember, the prompt will direct you to your target audience, whomever that may be. Maybe it's the student body, the parent body. We will, as we look at the prompt, you will see exactly who your target audience is. Now we're going to be looking at the communication process in the most basic form. You remember it, don't you? That's one of the first things I'm sure most teachers prefer to start with this. Now, your target audience will be the persons you're writing to, speaking to, communicating with. Now, those we would call in the communication process the receiver, because those are the persons receiving your message. But students, before you have a receiver, let us backtrack. You must have a sender. Now the sender is you. You, in whatever role you're required to play. As Ms. Hines has said, you're a communication specialist, a health worker, student leader. You are the sender of the information, and in this case, we call it the message. Now, before you send that out, because you want it to be effective, before you send it out, we remember you do what is called encoding. I pause as you remember, because you learned this, I think, in September, October. What does it mean to encode? All right, I give you a minute. It simply means that the sender, which is you,
That's right.
chooses a suitable form and then uses the most appropriate tone and language to get the message across. Now, once you have done that and you have compiled your message, your speech, your address, your letter, whatever it is, that's your information, your message, you send it to the receiver, which now would be your target audience. Remember the prompt? Always has a target audience. That audience now, the receiver, decodes the message that you sent. What do? They simply interpret the message sent. Do you see how important it is then to encode properly? To ensure that exactly what you want the receiver to get, to understand from your information, your message, is what you sent. Because guess what? If they interpret, their feedback is going to be based on their interpretation. So after they have interpreted, they are going to react. And you want the reaction, you want them to react the way you had imagined it to be. So therefore, you are going to ensure that you encode, you package your message properly, and send it out, transmit that message to your target audience, and then to ensure a positive feedback. All right?
That means then, Ms. Tingling, that one of the first things that I need to do as a communicator before I encode is to take into consideration my receivers. Who is my target audience?
And you would look at some variables. Their socioeconomic background, their level of education. Tell me some more. Yes, you're right. Age. And a wide range of variables are involved before you encode your message to make it effective. Remember, at the end of the communication studies, you ought to be effective communicators if you were not before. All right?
So let us take a look at this prompt. Now, this prompt is going to guide the rest of our discussion. You are a school counselor who has been asked to make separate addresses.
Miss Hines, excuse me, you're a school counselor, so that's the who, that's the role you play.
There you go.
So we go right back. So we are linking this prompt to what she said, that slide earlier. You are a school counselor, that's your role, bear that in mind. Thank you.
Who has been asked to make separate addresses to parents and guardians of teachers aged 14. Teenagers aged 14 to 17, and to the teenagers themselves. So again, you need to look at who your target audience is. In this case, you're dealing with two.
All of two.
The address should be based on the sensitive subject of sexual activity and sexually transmitted diseases. In an essay of no more than 500 words, A, identify and justify the difference in approach that you would use in your address to both audiences. Your response should focus on your use of content, language, and register. B, describe those strategies and visual aids that could be used to enhance your presentation to both audiences. Now, students, I want you to think about all of these words that you have seen highlighted, because you need to now think about the who. You need to think about who am I? What role do I play? Who am I trying to get my message across to? Which is your target audience.
Your receiver.
Your receiver.
Thank you.
You must also think about what specifically am I expected to do? Now, in this case, you are expected to identify and justify. Pay attention to those words. Describe. Now, let us find out what these very strong words mean.
All right? The very strong words Ms. Hines is talking about are your key terms. All right? There had to be a reason why she was emphasizing and carrying on about identify and justify, and she's not mad. So there had to be a reason for it to be going on like that. Now, the reason is if you don't understand, if you're not able to define, to know the meaning of your key terms, how are you going to understand the question? So you must be able to define the key terms in order to understand the question. Because once you understand the question, you know, you're on your way to acing the paper. Not true? All right. Now, what does it mean? We're talking. Hey, you and I, you're not just sitting in your couch looking at me doing all the talking. What does it mean to identify? That's the first instruction you were given. When you identify something, you establish or you indicate what the thing is. So you know if you're going to answer that prompt, that's what you would do. All right, so she carried on about justify. Let us understand what it means to justify. Am I getting it right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You provide reasons to show or to prove that what you have identified is right. All right, that's key. Then to describe is to give an account of something in words. Now, students, there are several other key terms. These are the key terms in that particular prompt. But throughout the paper 2, as I said, there's section A, section B, section C. These are some of the key terms that you would see coming out in these sections, because section C is really the culminative section, you know, where you would now put your ideas together. So some other key terms, and I want you as you sit there to remind yourselves of some of them as I give you some. Discuss, state, explain, assess or evaluate, create, comment, analyze. All right, and as I said before, you can look for these instructions. Now remember, if you notice, these key terms, what are they? They are verbs. They are something that you do. So it means, therefore, that as you approach the paper, you know you have something to do. But what exactly is it? That you must know. All right? So I am going to, because I'm such a wonderful teacher, I am going to define a few more for you. But there you are. You're going to, in the comfort of your living room, your dining room, your bedroom, anywhere else but the classroom, and I know you're happy about that, you are going to be defining the rest. It is important. I can't stress that enough, that you must understand the key terms. So here we're looking at compose, which is simply to formulate and write. So you put together, for example, a speech. You put your ideas together and you write. To state is to express something clearly in words to provide specific information.
So, for example, a question could say, state 2 appropriate strategies you would use in your presentation.
Very good. And to discuss, which is a very common one. It's simply to write or talk, but for the purposes of the essay writing, which we're focusing on, it's write or about a topic in detail, taking into account different ideas. That's what discuss means. So if your question says discuss, and Ms. Hines will take you through a prompt looking at what to discuss.
Now in this prompt, it asks you to, in an essay of no more than 500 words, discuss how you would go about A, sourcing information for your speech, B, using language techniques to make the speech effective, C, use non-verbal forms of communication to enhance the delivery of the speech, and D, use digital technology to enhance the delivery of the speech.
So they ask you to discuss those which you're going to write about in detail, taking into account
each aspect.
Thank you.
Of the question. So now, what do we write to make it right? Now, Ms. Tingling is going to read the prompt for you again so that you can just refresh your memories. Don't worry.
All right, here is the prompt, the one we are dissecting today. You are a school counselor who has been asked to make separate addresses to parents and guardians of teenagers aged 14 to 17 and to the teenagers themselves. The address should be based on the sensitive subject of sexual activity and sexually transmitted diseases. In an essay of no more than 500 words, identify and justify the difference in approach that you would use in your address to both audiences. Your response should focus on your use of content, language, and register.
Now I want you to pay keen attention, students, to the fact that that part of the question asks you to identify and justify the difference in approach that you would take with both audiences. Now, even though the prompt may tell you that you're doing separate addresses, you are still composing one essay in the exam. So it simply means that when you're discussing the parents, how you would go about discussing your approach with the parents, then you would do that in one paragraph. And then in another paragraph, you would discuss how you would deal with it.
Not an essay, a paragraph, because it all comes together in one essay.
One essay.
Because I'm bilingual today.
Uno essay.
Okay.
So it's not that you're going to sit down and think, oh dear Jesus, Cape Wickedy.
All right.
No, it is one essay.
In an essay of no more than 500 words. An essay, uno.
All right. So let us pay attention now to the difference in approach that we would take with our first target audience, which is the parents or guardians. Now we're going to argue that we would take the formal approach. Do you agree with me, Ms. Ting?
Certainly.
So I am going to throw this out to our brilliant students today and ask them, why would we automatically assume that the formal approach is the best to take? Let me give you a second to think about it. Now, because you're all bright sparks and you're just beaming.
Miss?
Yes,
because
ma'am.
the big people, they're adults.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Just asking. Am I right?
Yes, you are.
Correcto.
Give yourself a clap. You earned it. So yes, they are adults. And so because they are adults, we are going to use the formal approach, which allows us within a formal setting to sit and disseminate information to them, because the parents would understand that this is an address. And so I will be sitting there receiving information, and therefore I can absorb the information. The next thing we need to think about is the language, the content, and the register. Because the question did not just say, discuss, identify, and justify the difference in approach. The question asks you to look at this approach in relation to 3 areas. So we're going to take these areas apart. And the first one that we're going to be looking at is language or dialectal variation.
Oops.
Oh, yes. You want to take that on?
No, miss, want to know what it is.
You want to know what it is? All right.
So the role I play now is that of a student who really doesn't know.
All right, ma'am. So let me educate you today. Now, dialectal variation speaks to the variety of dialects used by a group of people. Note that, a group of people in a particular geographical location or within what we call a speech community.
Like a vernacular thingy?
Like a vernacular. So you know when you talk about the Rasta English, I man, dread man, I and I?
What you say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, what language then, when we're considering our parents, would be more appropriate? Think about it. Parents, guardians, we're in a formal setting. We're having a meeting to discuss a topic. What would be the most appropriate? And of course, I know you're brimming to tell me. And it is? No, man. Something is happening with my other student today. Come now. Help them along.
Standard, Caribbean, because you talk about geographical, region and all those fancy terms. So I had to break it down a little bit. And so you're talking about the standard Caribbean English?
Yes, ma'am, you are correct. Woo. Feel proud, don't it? Now, again, students, remember, you are going to also, even though for the most part, your language will be the
standard Caribbean English.
You will also infuse and inject where necessary the Creole.
Hold on a minute. You said inject, put a little bit in. I think an injection. So I can put some Creole in the speech.
Yes, ma'am.
My patois.
Yes, ma'am.
Chatbout.
That is simply because,
Okay.
guess what?
What?
You are an effective communicator, you remember that?
Yes.
And so you have to think about the fact that you will have a diverse audience.
What you say?
So people coming from different socioeconomic backgrounds.
What did you say?
Different social. So, you know, some may be from the upper class. You know, all of those terms you learned in social studies. Right. And you're looking at also the education levels. They may vary. So we have to consider diversity.
So you are actually saying that your target audience, the receiver, may be from different backgrounds.
That's correct.
And so you have to prepare an address to cater to all in order to be effective, because you need to get the appropriate feedback.
There you go.
That's what you're saying.
That is exactly what I'm saying. Now let us look at register. What is a register? You want to take it on for me?
The students at home?
No. I'm helping you today as well.
So a register speaks to the level of formality or informality in the chosen dialect and tone of a speaker. Why is this important? It is important since different contexts call for different registers.
All right. So let me take it from you here and just take you back. Now, the definition states, a register speaks to the level of formality or informality in the chosen dialect and tone of a speaker. So if you are speaking to a teacher, the register that you use in speaking to that teacher will not be the same that you would use when communicating with your friends. Think about it. Now, do not forget also that there is another key element to consider, because we did say different contexts call for different registers. So that means, let us refresh ourselves with what it means when we refer to context. Now, context is one of those twofold concepts, simply because context has to do with the social, and it also has to do with the situational. Now, when you think of the social is simply the who. Who am I getting my message across to? Which is the
target audience.
There you go.
The receivers.
There you go. And the situational deals with the what and the where. And so in this case, the what is
address.
The address. Yes.
The address. Yes. I was right.
And the what also takes into consideration the fact that you're dealing with the sensitive topic of
sexual activity and sexually transmitted diseases.
And the where takes into consideration, where is it taking place? So don't forget now, context deals with the S and the S, the social and the situational. So let us think again about our prompt. We're dealing with parents, we're dealing with guardians. What register best suits them? And of course, the formal register. It does not mean, though, that you will not infuse or inject a little informality, because again, you want to keep your audience engaged and you want to take into consideration the diversity of your audience.
You mean some may not understand all the big words and all of that?
Exactly, right. Because remember, within the formal register, you use a lot of complex structures and formal vocabulary. So you need to infuse a little informality to break down for those who may not readily understand or for those who may not be on the same educational level, so that all can receive your message clearly.
And the feedback
and
is
give
right.
you the desired
feedback.
All right. Now the content. Now the content is simply the things that make it up. Yeah? So when you think about it now as it relates to the exam, the content speaks to the things that are included in a piece of writing. So for the most part, let us go back to the parts of the essay.
The bulk of the information.
There you go. And that would fall the bulk of the information, not to say that information is not in your introductory paragraph and your conclusion.
That's why I said bulk.
The bulk of the information
is in the body.
Is in the body.
I'm on a roll.
Yes, you are. So what would we focus on? What content would we include in our presentation, in our address? We would ensure that there are more medical-based terms. So we're looking at the use of scientific language and technical jargon, but please, not excessively so, because you don't want to lose your audience. You want them to actually seek and want to absorb the information. You want them to leave informed and not bored to tears. You want them to leave understanding clearly. So you will not overburden or overladen your address.
No, because what we ought to remember as well, besides spoke of the less educated, but really it doesn't matter your level of education when it comes to scientific information, because if that is not your area of discipline, you're not going to readily understand. So you cannot lace your presentation with a lot of pseudo-technical jargons. It's going to be lost on the audience. They're going to become bored, uninterested, disengaged, and you would not have the desired feedback. So keep your address, keep the language clear as much as you can, as simple as you can.
Now you'll also ensure that you use relevant statistics and information from sources of authority to support the information being presented. That will give credence to whatever arguments you're telling the parents. Now, for the teenagers, we would use the opposite approach. Now, why would we take the opposite approach?
Because they're teenagers, they're their parents' children. They're half the age or quarter the age, and so the interest would be different. Their approach, their thinking is different. So, for example, I'm thinking language. Would we be so formal, Miss Hines?
Not at all. What it simply means is that even though we would be using the standard Caribbean English, we would infuse more catchy phrases and slang. Or
like chat mode.
Yeah.
I love that one, good.
Because
so
they're trending.
All right. So we use the things that are the language that is trending.
That is trending. The register will also be informal because you want to keep it lighter and more straightforward and teenage friendly.
Yes.
The content as well will be the same. Now let us take a look at part B of the question. Now part B asks us to describe those strategies and visual aids that could be used to enhance your presentation to both audiences.
All right, so we are looking at strategies. We have to move quickly. We look at language use. That is a very important strategy. And again, in this, we're talking about appropriate vocabulary, which I'm simply reinforcing because we looked at both audiences and we would use more formal vocabulary with the parents as opposed to the teenagers. Their vocab, which is really words, would be more straightforward, direct, because you don't want to bore them. They're really not interested in what you have to say, they know so true, don't it? And so therefore your language is more. You would also adapt or change your tone to match the content. So you get, remember, it's a heavy content. It's a topical issue, sexually transmitted diseases. And so persons are going to be sitting there and they want to know this. So there may be a point where your tone could be a little lighter to lessen the tension. Or if you really want to have the parents, we're looking at the parents now, understand what you're talking about, your tone could also be very serious, sober, because you have to hear this. We're talking about your children, so you can change the tone to engage, to keep them occupied. The multifaceted approach, which would be incorporating audiovisual aids, maybe a video clip from a leading authority, Dr. Dian, Hines, leading gynecologist, said so and so, or some testimonials, from parents themselves who have had that. Also looking at visual aids, projects, use your overhead projector to project graphs and tables showing statistics to strengthen your arguments, and pictures of the impact of this disease on teenagers, their children. What about the teenagers themselves? Same language use, same strategy. As I said, use lighter vocabulary. Your tone will be, for me, predominantly acerbic, because it may not be as sharp, as severe, but you still want the seriousness to come out. The multifaceted approach, again, using audiovisual presentation, we can borrow from our politicians. You see them on the campaign, and when they make an address and they pause and you get the latest song. So it is, right? So you can, maybe a catchy song from one of our popular artists, insert a little bit, visualize pictures in color, depicting the physical and emotional impact of contracting STDs, and of course teenage-friendly brochures. I'm so sorry I don't have one to show you, containing enough information to develop awareness, but also very friendly with pictures and all of that, so that they will actually read it. All right? Wow, here we are now, looking at these two images. Talk the truth, speak the truth, and speak it ever. Which one of these were you when we just started? Image A? And I am hoping that you're now image B. Yeah, I've got it. And so you're going into the exam to
mash it up.
All right, because you're going to write the essay right. Have a pleasant rest of the day. That's all today for CXC Cape Communication Studies. Students, I hope you have grasped some of the points we discussed. Parents as well who are home. You can catch a repeat of today's lesson on JNN Today at 5 p.m. and in the schools not out highlights on Saturday between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. It will also be on video on demand on One Spot Media. Don't go away. CXC Physics is up next. Until next time, I am Charmaine Tingling.
And I'm Dian Hines.
Do enjoy the rest of your day.
Lessons here on TVJ. The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, along with TVJ, present Schools Not Out. CSEC and CAPE lessons live Mondays to Fridays from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, with weekly Schools Not Out tutorial sessions on Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Schools Not Out, live CSEC and CAPE lessons here on TVJ. The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, along with